Hello and welcome. My name is Amanda and today I have for you my April wrap-up. So for basically the whole month of April, I participated in the Magical Readathon, which was hosted by G over at Book Roast. So I didn't read any books that were outside of what I had planned for the readathon. So if you watched my readathon vlog, you will have seen these books already. But what I'm just going to do now is give you my stats, so what rating I gave each, how many pages or hours it was, and then my total at the end. So this should be a fairly quick video. So to start out with the physical books I read 2 full books, and then I started or read partially 2 other books. The first book I read was The Art of War by Sun Tzu. This copy is 126 pages. And because it's mostly just a list of tactics, I didn't really give it a star rating, but I know quite a few people do use this in terms of business and not just in terms of like building an army or anything like that. It was pretty interesting, but I mean, overall, it just kind of read like a list. The part that I liked the most was the introduction and just learning a little bit more about Sun Tzu and these techniques. So that was really interesting to me. The next book I read was James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 star rating and it was 119 pages. I've read 2 Roald Dahl books now, and I would say that the BFG is still my favorite over James and the Giant Peach, but overall I did really enjoy this book. It was really cute, and the movie really followed the storyline pretty well. The next book that I read a couple of pages in was Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. I only read 29 pages in this month, so I still am only like a third of the way through. And I'm going to make it a priority for May to finish because it's taken me a while and I want to find out what happens. The next book that I partially read was The German Woman by Paul Greiner. I got just over halfway. I got 117 pages into this and I just need to finish it. It's not a bad book. I didn't have time to finish it within the month. And it was a little slow going for me. I was only reading in the evening and the chapters are usually around like the 20-page mark, which for me is pretty long for a chapter. So I just wasn't able to read very much or get very far in this book. My audiobooks, I'm not going in order of how I read them. I'm just reading them off. Basically, actually, it's from... Never mind. The first audiobook I read in April was A Man Called Uwe by Fredrik Backman, and this was 9 hours and 9 minutes. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I actually wrote a review of it on Goodreads, which I will leave linked down in the description box. It's a spoiler-free review. But basically, I thought this was a really cute contemporary book. Wasn't too sure if I would like it at first because the main character that we follow is in his late 50s, and I typically like to read books with characters that are closer to my age. But overall it was really cute and I really enjoyed the story, and I definitely would like to read more Fredrik Backman books. The next book I read was The Alchemyst by Michael Scott. This was a 10-hour and 2-minute book that I gave 3 stars. It held my attention in the beginning. It was pretty fast-paced. It started off with action right away. And then I don't really know what happened, but my interest started to taper off pretty quickly after the first third of the book. I think I've decided that I'm not going to continue on with this series. It was alright, but I'm not invested enough in the characters to really care how their story ends, so I think I'm just gonna leave it with the first book. So I would say that my favorite read from this month was Unbroken by Hillenbrand. This is a 13-hour and 56-minute book that I gave 5 out of 5 stars, and I believe it's actually my first 5 out of 5 stars for this year. This is a biography that's based off Louis Zamperini, who ran in the 1936 Olympics in Berlin, and then shortly after joined the army as an airman. He was a bombardier, and this tells his story basically from childhood to the end of his life, how he trained and got himself to the Olympics, how he enlisted in war, and what happened. And for those of you that don't know his story, so again, if you watched my vlog from the readathon, I think I talked for almost 20 minutes about this book, at least the first half. But after we hear his story about running in the Olympics and then him joining the army, it explains what it was like for him as a bombardier, and then progresses to when his crew's plane crashed on a search mission for another missing plane, and he and 2 other crewmen survived in a raft, or 2 rafts, for 47 days, and then landed on a Japanese occupied island and became prisoners of war, and how being in a prisoner of war camp was for him, and the hardships he faced and other soldiers faced during that time, to when the war ended and he was released, and just how he dealt with that post-traumatic stress disorder after the war, and what it kind of did to him and how it made him as a person. This is a phenomenal book, and if you have any interest either in World War II or in historical fiction biography type books, you should absolutely pick this book up. It was phenomenal. I also listened to All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This was a 16-hour and 2-minute book that I gave 3 stars, and overall it wasn't bad. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting it to be, and I'm not sure if it didn't live up to my expectations because I listened to it right after Unbroken, and that set the bar so high for me, or if it was kind of a same old sort of World War II story that I've read a lot in the past, if it maybe just wasn't what I was expecting or not as good as I was hoping it would be. But overall 3 stars is pretty good rating for me, and it's not a bad book. I'd probably recommend it again to people who like the World War II based stories and just the historical fiction type stories as well. My lowest rated book for this month was Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, I think was the other author's name. I gave this 2 stars out of 5, and it was 12 hours and 32 minutes. Honestly, I don't even know what happened in this book. I lost interest so early on, and if I didn't have to read it to finish my Divination Owls, I would not have finished this book. I would have DNF'd it. It was not at all what I thought it would be, and I feel like it was just kind of all over the place. I really didn't like any of the characters. Like, the character I liked the most was the dog, and he barely had a part in the story. So yeah, it was my lowest rated book, and I really can't say much more than that. I also read Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, and I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars, and it was 5 hours and 13 minutes. It was cute. I guess the more that I'm reading and watching Peter Pan stories and retellings, the more I'm not liking Peter Pan so much as a character, and that kind of upsets me a little because he was one of my favorite characters growing up. But yeah, I mean, this is the story that you expect it to be when you hear or think of Peter Pan. It was cute. I listened to the audiobook version that was narrated by Jim Dale, so it was really nice. But at the same time, I kept kind of like slipping back into Harry Potter whenever I would hear his voice. But overall, it was a cute book, and I would recommend it if you like the children's classics. One of my other favorite reads for this month, Ronan, sit, sit, good boy, go see Dad. One of my other top favorite reads for this month was The Martian by Andy Weir. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and it was 10 hours and 53 minutes. I blew through this story so fast. It made me laugh out loud. I teared up. It had my brain racking for like putting together all the pieces and stuff, and like the mathematics and helping figure out how long he would survive on Mars. I really enjoyed the book. I would absolutely recommend it if anyone's looking to kind of get into sci-fi. The narration was phenomenal, and then the story itself it made a very serious situation seem pretty lighthearted and easy to digest. I also read 172 Hours on the Moon by Johan Harstad. This is a young adult sci-fi book that I gave 3 stars, and it was 8 hours and 43 minutes. Basically, to summarize it, for me, it was like a young adult version of The Thing, but instead of aliens, it has doppelgangers. That's pretty much exactly what it felt like to me. It's an interesting premise, but I feel like too much focus was on certain details and not enough on other details, and it just kind of, the pacing was weird, and then just the plot was kind of a little mixed up, and it didn't flow very well, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It wasn't a bad book. Yeah, it wasn't a bad book. And the last book I listened to was The Circle by, is it Dave Eggers? I think that's it. I'll put a picture up. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars, and it was 13 hours and 42 minutes. I don't really know what to say about this book either. It was, I guess, interesting, but this to me felt like, I guess it's an adult, but it kind of felt young adult, and it had very similar ties to like 1984 and Big Brother, but rather than the government wanting to take control of the population, it was a company. I did not like the main character whatsoever, but I guess her character development was alright, because instead of watching her progress into a better human being and have those learning steps, you see her deteriorate and basically just become a robot. So in total, I read 12 books this month. My page count was 391 books, and my hour count was 100 hours and 12 minutes. My overall star rating was 3.6, which is really good for me. And I enjoyed most of the books I read, so I would say it was a pretty good reading month. And yeah, overall I'm pretty excited about the books that I read. There were some flops, but you know, that's kind of to be expected. And yeah, I really enjoyed participating in the Magical Readathon and just the books that I read this month. If you also participated in the readathon, or if you read any of these books or have read any of these books, I would love to know, so please leave that down in the comments below, and I will chat with you there until my next video. Bye!